Hi everyone, we're here just at the back of the rocks in a place called Miller's Point. And behind me is a very modern apartment building called Parbury. But buried underneath this building are the ruins of a really old building from 1820. So the archaeologist dug underneath here and discovered the foundations. Come on inside and we'll have a look at the archaeological ruins. So here we are underneath that modern apartment building, and we're down in the archaeological ruins of Parbury Ruins, an old house that has been discovered on this site. It's one of the oldest buildings in Sydney, but of course, unlike Cadman's Cottage, it fell down a long time ago, and only the ruins or the foundations of the building are left. You can see this is a very steep block of land, and it would have gone all the way down a very steep hill, and at the bottom of this hill was Sydney Harbour. Walking down these modern stairs, I would be walking in the olden days into the backyard of this house. So down here is where the backyard would have been. And of course, one really important feature that everybody would have had in the olden days is a well. So down here in front of me is a very deep well. The archaeologists got very excited when they saw such a deep well buried under the ground from almost 200 years ago. So this room, when the archaeologists found it, they had to decide what room it was in the house. And we want you to be an archaeologist and see if you can work it out. Obviously, there are three main features that stand out. In the middle of the room is a fireplace, and this fireplace would have been used for lots of different purposes. Over on this side of the fireplace is a stone basin. So have a think what a stone basin might have been used for. And on this side of the fireplace is what looks like a cupboard. It's a recess or a hole in the wall, but of course it would have been very hot right next to the fireplace here. So can you be an archaeologist and think what this room might have been used for? When the archaeologists were digging around under the ground here, they discovered thousands of different artefacts. Artefacts are really important things that tell us about our history. For example, in this glass case, we can see what looks like the remains of a jug and what remains of what looks like a large teacup. But of course, this teacup is made out of china, and it's not actually a teacup, it's a chamber pot. A chamber pot is like a potty for adults, and they would have gone to the toilet sitting on this chamber pot, which went under their bed, and in the morning they would have taken it out and thrown it down into the harbour to get rid of their waste. These glass cases display some of the thousands of artefacts that were uncovered on this site. We can see things like children's marbles that the children would have played with. We can see smoking pipes, which were very common in the olden days. And one thing that really stands out is this little brown bottle that looks like a jar, but it's actually an inkwell. So in the olden days, people would have to draw with an ink pen. They didn't have biros like we do that are full of ink. They would dip their ink pen in a little inkwell like this one to be able to write with. These artefacts belong to the people that have lived in this area or in this house for over 200 years. One of the first people to live in this house was a convict called Hugh Noble. Hugh Noble bought this house in 1820, and he lived here with his wife Elizabeth. Hugh was a convict sent from England for stealing a horse, but eventually he worked as a warehouse manager in the main government warehouse, the commissariat stores. Unfortunately, being a convict, he actually stole something out of those stores and was again sentenced to a prison at Port Macquarie, where he probably received lashes with a cat of nine tails. He did eventually come back to Sydney from his imprisonment in Port Macquarie, and eventually he and his family moved to Tasmania, where unfortunately Hugh died in Hobart, a poor, broken and lonely man in the Cascade Asylum for the insane.